When people refer to the Frisian language, they usually refer to the West Frisian language spoken in the province of Fryslân in the Netherlands. But even within West Frisian, there are certain dialect differences. One of those varieties is called Klaaifrysk and is spoken in approximately the western third of the province. Klaaifrysk means Klaaifrysian, as this region is referred to as the Fryske Klaai, owing to the bedrock of thick sea clay to be found there. To put this area into perspective, some of the larger or more prominent towns and cities found in the clay region include the capital Hilbert, as well as such places as Fryske, Walsert and Snits. Note though that almost all of these cities speak a Dutch variety called Standertfrysk or City Frisian, while people in the surrounding rural areas do speak Frisian proper. Grauw is important to mention as it's the variant of Frisian from this town that was selected to form the basis of Standard Frisian that appears in dictionaries and other official publications. That means that Standard Frisian is largely based on Klaaifrysk. Part of the reason for this is that Klaaifrysk is considered one of the most neutral Frisian dialects, with only a few factors that differentiate it from the 2 to 3 other dialects. In the Frisian dictionaries of Zantema and Visser, variants of both Klaaifrysk and West-Frisian were selected, though Klaaifrysk forms were chosen far more frequently. The easiest way to showcase some of the key features of Klaaifrysk is to contrast it with West-Frisian, the dialect spoken in the eastern part of the province and in part of neighbouring Groningen. A sound change that can be observed in certain words is that where West-Frisian has u, Klaaifrysk has o. So we see that Klaaifrysk has do, tomme, brom, krom for the words you, thumb, prune, bent, while West-Frisian has do, tomme, broom, kroom. Another very noticeable difference in pronunciation is in the pronunciation of the personal pronouns and a few other words. Klaaifrysk speakers say mij, die, hij, zij, wij, wij, while West-Frisian speakers say me, die, he, she, be, wie. For me, you, he, she, by, we. Note though that these aren't spelled differently in standard Frisian orthography, where technically the West-Frisian forms are being used. Another sound correspondence sometimes seen is that where Klaaifrysk has or, West-Frisian has the monophthong or. So while we have son and horn as the West-Frisian and the standard Frisian forms, many Klaaifrysk speakers may pronounce these something more like son and horn. A similar correspondence is with the Klaaifrysk diphthong and the West-Frisian monophthong So we see the Klaaifrysk form neken and heek for eye, naked and hoek, while West-Frisian has neken and heek. While the Klaaifrysk spellings with the diphthongs were preferred, the West-Frisian forms are now also accepted as correct in writing. Another difference in pronunciation between the two, not reflected in the orthography, is in the pronunciation of several diphthongs. This is perhaps the most recognizable feature that differentiates Klaaifrysk from standard Frisian. In general, Klaaifrysk speakers pronounce these diphthongs further back in the mouth. So while a West-Frisian speaker would say heit, wijn, rein, a Klaaifrysk speaker would say hoit, wijn, roin. A Klaaifrysk speaker would use that same pronunciation of the diphthongs for words spelled EI and AAI, so the name Klaaifrysk itself would be Klaaifrysk in Klaaifrysk, although that's a bit too much clay in my mouth. Another feature of Klaaifrysk that did not make it into standard Frisian is their verb to have, which in Klaaifrysk is hebben. Instead, the West-Frisian form have was selected because it was further away from the Dutch verb hebben. Even though have became the standard Frisian word, in speech many people from the Klaai and the Zuidwesthoeken still use hebben. Klaaifrysk and Zuidwesthoeks also share in part a variant pronunciation of the letter cluster OF, which instead of being a long O becomes a diphthong or a new sound entirely, ow. This can be seen in words like oorpraat and oormaatje, which might then be pronounced oorpraat, oormaatje, or aupraat, aumaatje. Now, while I pronounce that last example word oormaatje, another feature commonly heard in Klaaikuten would be oormaatsie, where that final y found in so many Frisian words, becomes an ear. A similar feature is found in certain diminutives, word endings added to give a sense of something being small or endearing. Where Klaaifrysk adds the ending I to nouns ending in velar consonants, so g, k, and ng. Boekje becomes boekie. The standard Frisian diminutive nestke, a little nest, often has the T missed out when spoken aloud, though in West-Frisian this changes the form of the diminutive too, becoming nesje, rather than the Klaaifrysk neske. In comparative adjectives, Klaaifrysk has less breaking than West-Frisian, so the word mooi, beautiful, is just mooier, more beautiful, rather than the mooier, where the vowels coalesce or break into a w sound, as in the West-Frisian form. So wat vindt u mooier? Wat vindt u mooier? There's a few differences in the verbs too. Frisian has two types of weak verbs, those ending in and those ending in j. However, which category they are can change from dialect to dialect. So we see that West-Frisian has affaseer as a class 2 j verb, while Klaaifrysk has it as a class 1 verb, affasseren. Klaaifrysk appears to have more class 1 weak verbs, while West-Frisian has more class 2 weak verbs. So it's a good way to patch Frisian speakers into two dialects. Or was it better? Across quite a large area in the southern Klaaifrysk region, several features are also shared with Zuidwesthoeks Frisian, the third major dialect group in mainland Fryslân. One of these is the addition of a final d in certain past participles, which in Standard Frisian, and indeed in the north of the Klaai area too, just end in n. With other verbs though, it's West-Frisian that has variations with a final d added on, and the forms kam, kom, naam, noom, instead of the Klaaifrysk and standard gommen and nom. In the region of Baradeel, to the north of the city of Huis, a special variety called Bjirmsk is spoken. Here the long o of Standard Frisian becomes a diphthong, ow, so words like do and ko become dau and kau in Bjirmsk. Another change in the same direction is in the pronunciation of words with the vowel e, which becomes an I. Standard Frisian reg becomes Bjirmsk reg. Let's compare a few sentences in the Klaaifrysk dialect with Standertfrysk, bearing in mind that the standard is more of a written rather than a spoken language. I'll read the standard in my normal Frisian pronunciation, which is a real medley of different dialect influences, so might not be particularly helpful, and then I'll highlight some of the differences in Klaaifrysk and do my best to show how that dialect is. Ik gaf zijn knibbelschoen. Hij had worden zijn beet van een hoen houden. Zijn huid had hem 6 uur lang naar squallen gaan litten. Do zegst mij wel, maar haast neertje mij zijn. Zelfs duwt net de damjen, de moele is haar droeg van het toast. Ik heb zijn knibbelschoen. Hij had er eens een keer een bijt van een hoen houden. Zijn huid had hem 6 uur naar squallen gaan litten. Do zegst mij wel, maar haast neertje mij zijn. Zelfs duwt net de dammen, de moele is haar droeg van het toast. Now let's hear it in West-Frisian to highlight how it's different from Klaaifrysk in both some word choice and pronunciation. Ik had zijn knibbelschoen. Hij had er eens een keer een beet van een hoen houden. Zijn huid had hem 6 uur naar squallen gaan litten. Du zegst mij wel, maar haast neertje mij zijn. Zelfs duwt net de damjen, de moele is haar droeg van het juist. So that's the Klaaifrysk dialectal variant of Frisian. As we can see, it largely follows the pattern of Standard Frisian, though it has some key pronunciations and variations of its own. Come back for the next video in the project Frysk to find out about perhaps the most well-known Frisian dialect, het West-Frysk.